The great chamber of the Galactic Council was built to make visitors feel small. Its walls rose so high that clouds formed near the ceiling. 12 massive thrones circled the room, each one designed for a different species. Light came from a captured star that floated in the center, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Ambassador stood alone in the middle of this vast space. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. Around her, the representatives of 12 alien species looked down from their thrones. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had bodies made of light or crystal or things that human eyes could not properly see. All of them watched her with expressions that ranged from pity to disgust. The High Arbiter spoke first. His voice was like grinding stones, and his words were translated by the small device in Seer. "Humanity has been judged," he announced. "After 300 years among the stars, your species has been found guilty of multiple violations against galactic harmony." Said nothing. She had expected this moment for months. The signs had been clear. The closed meetings, the whispered conversations that stopped when humans entered rooms, the slow removal of humans from important positions across the galaxy. "Your crimes are many," the Arbiter continued. "Your genetics are unstable, you change too quickly, you adapt when you should accept, you question when you should obey." Her body, shimmering like oil on water, leaned forward. "You spread your culture like a disease. Our young ones listen to your music. They watch your stories. They begin to think like you, to dream like you. This contamination cannot continue." The representative, a massive creature covered in bone-white armor, slammed a fist against his throne. "You are violent, unpredictable. Your history is written in blood. Every species in this chamber remembers what you did during the Scourge Wars." Wanted to remind them that humanity had fought the Scourge to protect everyone, not just themselves. She wanted to point out that millions of humans had died defending alien worlds. But she knew it would change nothing. The decision had already been made. This trial was just a performance. "The sentence is exile," the Arbiter declared. "Humanity will leave all territories within the unified systems. Your trade agreements are canceled. Your colonial rights are removed. You have 1 standard year to withdraw from all worlds. After that time, any human found within our borders will be treated as an invader." Silence filled the chamber. They waited. They expected screaming. They expected threats. They had positioned 3 warships outside the station, ready to respond to human aggression. The man and species that thought in terms of hive behavior had prepared containment protocols for riots. But did something that none of them understood. She smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible. Then she reached up and turned off her translation implant. The device made a soft click as it powered down. She spoke a few words in Old Earth English, a language that the Council's systems could not translate because no one had bothered to program it in. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. "What did she say?" they demanded. "What were those words?" No one could answer. The doors closed behind and she was gone. What happened next would be studied by alien historians for centuries. Within 6 hours, every human in the galaxy received a message. The contents of that message were never shared with other species. Within 48 hours, humans began to leave their homes, their jobs, their lives among the stars. They did not protest. They did not fight. They did not even complain. They simply packed their belongings and walked away. On the trade world of Nexus Prime, human merchants closed their shops and smiled at their confused alien customers. "It was good doing business with you," they said. "Take care of yourselves." On the research station orbiting the black hole at Centrum, human scientists backed up their private files, wiped their work terminals, and boarded transport ships without a word of explanation to their colleagues. On 100 colony worlds, human families gathered their children and their memories and headed for the spaceports. The aliens watched with growing unease. This was not how conquered species behaved. This was not how exiles were supposed to act. Where was the anger? Where was the desperation? A general sent a report to the Council. "They are not fleeing. They are evacuating. There is a difference. A fleeing species runs in chaos. An evacuating species moves with purpose. They know something we do not." The man called an emergency meeting. "Where are they going?" she demanded. "Our sensors show their ships heading toward the outer dark. Nothing is there. No habitable worlds. No resources. No stations. It is empty space." "Perhaps they mean to die," suggested the. "Perhaps this is some form of mass suicide." But even as she said it, she did not believe it. She had studied humans. They did not give up. They did not surrender to despair. It was one of the things that made them so dangerous. Ambassador boarded the last transport leaving Council space. A young journalist managed to reach her before she entered the ship. He had always been friendly to humans, had even written articles defending them. "Ambassador," he called out, "please help me understand. Where are you going? What will you do?" Turned to look at him. There was no anger in her eyes, no sadness, only a strange, quiet peace. "We are going home," she said. "But Earth is dead. The Scourge destroyed it 200 years ago." Smile returned that same mysterious expression she had worn in the council chamber. "Earth was never our home," she said. "It was just where we were born. Home is something you build, something you find, something you become." She paused at the ship's entrance. "Thank you for your kindness over the years. Remember it. The galaxy is going to change, and kindness will matter more than ever." Then she was gone, and the ship lifted off, joining the great river of vessels flowing toward the darkness between galaxies. The journalist stood alone on the empty platform, watching until the last human ship disappeared from sight. He could not explain why, but he felt afraid. Not of what the humans might do, but of what the galaxy had just lost. That night, for the first time in 300 years, no human voice spoke on any channel in the unified systems. The silence was absolute, and in that silence, the Galactic Council began to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. They had thought they were removing a threat. They were about to learn that they had removed something far more important. But that knowledge would come slowly, painfully, over the years that followed. For now, there was only the silence spreading across the stars like a wound that would not heal. The galaxy had never seen anything like the human evacuation. 10 billion people across 400 worlds moved as if they shared a single mind. They did not rush. They did not panic. They worked day and night with calm faces and steady hands, and within months they were gone. What disturbed the alien species most was not the departure itself. It was what the humans left behind. Nothing. On the colony world of Nu, they sent a salvage team to claim human technology. The humans were known for their adaptive engineering, their ability to make machines that could survive anywhere. They expected to find factories, vehicles, power plants, and computers. Instead, they found empty fields. The buildings had been taken apart piece by piece. The foundations had been dug up. Even the roads had been removed. Only bare earth remained, as if humans had never lived there at all. The salvage team leader sent a confused report to his superiors. "They did not just leave, they erased themselves. I have seen abandoned colonies before. There is always something left behind. Broken tools, garbage, foundations. Here there is nothing. The soil itself looks like it has been cleaned." Similar reports came from across the galaxy. Human research stations were found completely empty, their computers not just wiped but physically removed. Human quarters on alien space stations were stripped of everything, including the light fixtures and the carpet. A hospital that had employed human doctors discovered that all their medical records had been reorganized and translated, with notes explaining every procedure in perfect detail, so that alien doctors could continue the work. But the human wing of the hospital was bare metal and empty air. The hive mind was the first to recognize the pattern, presented her findings at an emergency session of the council. "They are not running away," she said, her mandibles clicking with each word. "They are closing a door. Every trace of their presence is being removed by design. They do not want us to follow them. They do not want us to find them. They are making sure that when they leave completely." "But why?" asked the Arbiter. "What are they hiding?" No one could answer. The true scope of the problem became clear over the following months. A shipyard lost 40% of its efficiency overnight when its human consultants. The humans had never held important titles. They had been advisors, assistants, maintenance workers, but somehow they had been essential. Without them, machines broke down and no one knew how to fix them. Production schedules collapsed. Quality control failed. A weapons research facility suffered a complete shutdown. Their most advanced project, a new type of shield generator, simply stopped working. When engineers investigated, they discovered that the core equations had been developed by a human mathematician who had left no notes behind. Without her, the project was nothing but expensive metal and confused scientists. The banking system nearly crashed when its human-designed security protocols began acting strangely. The humans who had created the system were gone, and no alien programmer could understand the code they had written. It was not just complicated. It was alien in a way that alien things had never seemed before. It thought in ways that other species could not follow. Across the galaxy, the same story repeated itself. Humans had never held power. They had never led governments or commanded fleets or ruled over other species. But they had been everywhere doing small jobs that no one paid attention to, fixing things that broke, solving problems that others could not solve, connecting systems that would not connect on their own. They had been the glue holding the galaxy together, and no one had noticed until the glue was gone. The council met in emergency session after emergency session, demanded answers that no one could give. How did this happen? How did one species make itself so essential without anyone noticing? They had been studying human history in a desperate attempt to understand. "It is what they do," she said quietly. "They adapt. They fit themselves into spaces that others do not see. They make themselves useful. It is a survival strategy. They did it on their own world for thousands of years before they reached the stars. But why would they help us if they knew we would exile them?" They did not answer for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was troubled. "I do not think they knew. I think they just helped. Because that is who they are, because they saw problems and wanted to fix them, because they could not stop themselves from caring." The chamber fell silent at these words. It was a disturbing thought. They had exiled a species not for being dangerous, but for being too helpful, too connected, too essential. Reports continued to arrive from the borders of known space. Human ships were crossing into the outer dark in an endless stream. The outer dark was the name given to the vast emptiness beyond mapped territory. No species had ever explored it. The distances were too great, the resources too scarce. Any ship that went in never came back. But the humans went anyway. Millions of ships carrying billions of people, flying into the darkness with no fear on their faces. Alien observers who watched them pass reported something strange. The humans did not look like exiles. They did not look defeated or broken or sad. They looked like people going on a long journey to somewhere they wanted to be. A captain managed to intercept a human transport and demand answers. The human pilot, an old man with white hair and kind eyes, simply smiled at him. "Where are you going?" the captain demanded. "There is nothing out there. You will die." "Maybe," the old man said, "but we will die free, and maybe dying is not what you think it is. Maybe there are things in the dark that you cannot imagine. Maybe we are not running away. Maybe we are running towards something." "Toward what?" The old man's smile grew wider. "Home." The captain let him go. He did not know why. Something in the human's eyes made him feel small, like a child who had wandered into a room full of adults discussing things beyond his understanding. 6 months after the exile order, the last human ship crossed the border into the outer dark. A small vessel followed at a distance, trying to track where they went. The human ships flew for 3 days, deeper and deeper into empty space. Then, without warning, they all disappeared. One moment they were there. The next moment they were gone. No engine signatures, no debris, no signals, just empty space where 10,000 ships had been. The captain sent a final report before turning back. They did not explode. They did not fly away. They simply stopped existing, as if they stepped through a door that we cannot see, as if they were never really here at all. The report was classified at the highest level. The council did not want their citizens to know. They did not want anyone to ask questions they could not answer. But questions came anyway. In the years that followed, the galaxy would learn just how much it had depended on the species it had cast away. Systems would fail. Conflicts would erupt. Problems would grow into crises with no one to solve them. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the stars, humanity was watching, waiting, becoming something new. The exile had ended one chapter of human history. But another chapter was just beginning. 1 year after the last human ship vanished into the outer dark, the galaxy began to fall apart. It started with small things. A medical facility on the discovered that their cure for neural decay no longer worked. This disease killed millions every year, and the cure had been developed by a human researcher named Dr. Sarah. When alien scientists studied her formula, they found something strange. The cure required a specific protein that only human bodies could produce. Doctor had been donating her own blood to create each batch of medicine. Without her, the cure was impossible to make. They sent messages into the outer dark begging for help. No answer came. The silence was complete. On a colony world, a power plant exploded without warning. The plant had been built with human help, using a containment system that human engineers had designed. For 20 years, it had worked perfectly. But when a small problem appeared, no one knew how to fix it. The alien engineers had never truly understood the system. They had trusted the humans to maintain it. Now the humans were gone and the system failed, killing 3,000 workers and leaving 2 million people without power. Then lost contact with 3 exploration vessels. When rescue ships finally found them, the crews were alive but completely lost. Their navigation systems had been based on star maps created by human cartographers. Now those maps were revealing their secrets. Hidden errors had been built into them, small mistakes that made travel possible only if you knew where the mistakes were. The humans had known. They had guided ships around the errors without ever explaining what they were doing. Without them, the maps were useless. Called an emergency session of the council. Her compound eyes swept across the chamber, looking at faces filled with fear and confusion. "We are receiving reports from across the unified systems," she announced. "Systems are failing. Technologies are breaking down. Problems that were solved decades ago are returning. And we cannot fix them because we never understood how they were fixed in the first place." The arbiter who had pronounced the sentence of exile shifted uncomfortably on his throne. "Surely this is temporary. Our scientists can learn. Our engineers can adapt." "Can they?" replied. "Our scientists have been trying for 1 year. They have made no progress. The human solutions do not follow our logic. They do not match our thinking. It is as if the humans built everything to work only for them." "That cannot be true," the arbiter insisted. "They shared their technology freely. They shared the results, not the methods. We have their machines, but we do not have their minds. And without their minds, the machines are just metal and mystery." The problems grew worse as months passed. Trade routes that had been safe for centuries became dangerous. Pirates appeared in places where they had never been before. The humans had patrolled those routes. No one had asked them to. No one had paid them to. They had simply done it because ships were being attacked and they wanted to help. Now the pirates were back and no one was there to stop them. The hegemony saw opportunity in the chaos. They were an aggressive species that had been kept in check for decades by fear of human retaliation. Humans had a reputation for violence. They were small and weak compared to most species, but they fought with a fury that terrified their enemies. They had learned this lesson during the Scourge Wars, when human soldiers had held the line against impossible odds. No species wanted to face humans in battle. But now the humans were gone. They began to expand, taking territory that had been protected by human presence. Colony worlds fell. Trade stations were captured. Thousands of aliens became refugees fleeing from aggression. The council debated and discussed and argued, but they did nothing. They had grown comfortable. They had forgotten how to fight. They had depended on humans to handle the violence so they could enjoy the peace. Diplomatic tensions exploded into open conflict. Old arguments between species, arguments that had been settled by human mediators, flared up again. They accused the of economic manipulation. The UN blamed the for territorial violations. Alliances that had lasted for centuries broke apart in months. In the middle of this chaos, a young historian named Rand began to research human history. He wanted to understand what the galaxy had lost. What he found changed his view of everything. Humans had been involved in almost every major peace treaty of the past 300 years, not as leaders or signers, but as advisors, translators, and negotiators. They had a gift for understanding what other species wanted, even when those species could not explain it themselves. They found common ground where none seemed to exist. They built bridges between enemies. Humans had also been essential to scientific progress. They asked questions that other species never thought to ask. They combined ideas from different fields in ways that seemed strange but produced amazing results. They failed constantly, but they never stopped trying. Each failure taught them something new. And humans had quietly protected the galaxy from dangers that no one else noticed. They monitored asteroid trajectories and adjusted them before they became threats. They tracked disease outbreaks and contained them before they became epidemics. They watched for signs of new scourge activity in dead regions of space. They were always watching, always working, always keeping the galaxy safe in ways that no one acknowledged or appreciated. Rand presented his findings to the council. "We did not exile a troublesome species," he said. "We removed the foundation of our civilization. Humans were not parasites. They were partners. They were the ones who made everything work. And we threw them away because we were afraid of how much we needed them." The arbiter, old now and weighed down by guilt, could not meet the young historian's eyes. "What can we do? They are gone. We do not know where they went. We cannot find them. Then we must hope that they come back, Rand said. Or we must hope that they are more forgiving than we deserve. The Council sent probes into the outer dark. None returned. They sent ships crewed by volunteers willing to risk their lives. Silence. They broadcast messages on every frequency, offering apologies and promises and pleas for help. Nothing. The darkness beyond the stars kept its secrets. Humanity was gone, and the galaxy was learning what that truly meant. Not just the loss of technology or knowledge or protection. Something deeper, something harder to name. The humans had brought hope. They had believed that problems could be solved, that enemies could become friends, that the future could be better than the past. They had spread that belief everywhere they went, infecting other species with their stubborn optimism. Now that hope was gone, and the galaxy was growing darker by the day. Alone in her chambers after another failed council session, stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the light of known suns, humanity was doing something, building something, becoming something. She did not know if they would ever return. She did not know if they even remembered the galaxy that had rejected them. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. If they did come back, the galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps that was exactly what the galaxy needed. 15 years after the human exodus, an exploration vessel named the Starward Hope flew deeper into the outer dark than any ship had gone before. Captain had volunteered for this mission knowing he might never return. His crew of 20 had made the same choice. The Council had stopped sending expeditions years ago after losing dozens of ships, but had studied the old reports. He had noticed a pattern that others had missed. The ships that vanished all disappeared at the same coordinates, as if something was waiting for them there. Something that took them. He wanted to find out what. For 3 weeks, the Starward Hope flew through empty space. There were no stars here, no planets, no debris, just darkness in every direction. The crew grew nervous. Some began to question the mission, but pushed forward. On the 22nd day, they found the beacon. It was small, no larger than a cargo container, floating alone in the void. It broadcast a simple message in an old human frequency that the ship's computer could barely translate. Turn back, this is not a threat, it is a kindness. The message repeated every 30 seconds. The beacon had been placed here deliberately, a warning for anyone foolish enough to come this far. Order the ship to continue. What they found beyond the beacon made every member of the crew freeze in shock and wonder. Ships, thousands of ships, tens of thousands. They stretched across the darkness in a formation so vast that the Starward Hope's sensors could not measure it. But these were not the vessels that humanity had taken into exile. Those had been simple transport ships, cargo haulers, civilian craft barely capable of long-distance travel. These ships were something else entirely. They were alive. That was the only way could describe them. The hulls seemed to breathe. The surfaces shifted and changed like skin. Lights moved across them in patterns that looked almost like thoughts. Some were small, the size of fighters. Others were enormous, larger than any station they had ever built. They drifted in perfect formation, moving together like a flock of birds or a school of fish. At the center of this impossible fleet hung a structure that's mind could barely process. It was a city, or a station, or perhaps something that had no name in any language. It orbited a star that burned with colors that should not exist, purple and green and shades that hurt to look at. The structure bent light around itself, creating halos and shadows that seemed to reach across space. "What is this?" whispered the navigator, her voice shaking. No one could answer. Then the communication screen activated on its own. A human face appeared. It was a woman, young and calm, with dark eyes that seemed to hold entire universes inside them. "You came further than the others," she said. Her voice was gentle but carried a weight that made one to kneel. "That took courage or foolishness. Sometimes they are the same thing." "Who are you?" managed to ask. "I am a witness, one of many. We watch the borders, we greet the curious. We turn back those who are not ready." "Not ready for what?" The woman smiled, and in that smile saw something that terrified him. It was not cruelty. It was not threat. It was knowledge. She knew things that he could not imagine. She had seen things that would break his mind if he tried to understand them. "Not ready for us," she said. "Not ready for what we have become." The screen flickered and suddenly could see more. The ships in the formation, the structure around the strange star, the humans moving through it all but changed. Different. Some floated in space without suits. Some seemed to be talking to the ships themselves. Some had eyes that glowed with inner light. How breathed, it has only been 15 years. Time moves differently in the outer dark, the witness said. We have had longer than you think, and we have found things here that your science cannot explain. Old things, things that were waiting for a species brave enough or desperate enough to look for them. We were both. The council sent me to find you. They want you to come back. They need your help. The witness's expression did not change, but something shifted in the air. The ships around them seemed to lean closer, listening. We know what the council wants. We know what is happening in the galaxy, the expansion, the failing systems, the growing darkness. She paused. We are not coming back. Then you will let the galaxy fall. No, the witness shook her head slowly. We will not let it fall, but we will not save it the way you want. We will not return as servants or helpers or fixers. Those days are over. We gave everything to the galaxy, and the galaxy threw us away. We will not make that mistake again. Felt despair rising in his chest. Then what? What will you do? We will watch. We will wait. We will protect when protection is needed in ways that you will never see. We will guide when guidance is needed in ways that you will never understand. But we will not bow. We will not beg. We will not explain ourselves to those who judged us unworthy. The witness leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to pierce through the screen, through scales, through everything he was. Tell the council this, we remember what you are. We know your fear and your pride and your smallness. We do not hate you for it, but we will never trust you again. The outer dark is ours now. This place beyond your maps, beyond your understanding, beyond your control. It is our home. And should you ever threaten it, should you ever come here with warships instead of questions, should you ever mistake our silence for weakness? Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire ship. You will learn why every predator species in the galaxy evolved to fear the dark. The screen went blank. The ship's engines activated on their own, turning the Starward Hope around and pushing it back toward known space. Tried to override the controls, but nothing worked. They were being sent home. Through the rear viewports, the crew watched the human fleet grow smaller and smaller. And then, just as they had come, the ships and the station and the impossible star simply vanished. One moment they filled the screen. The next moment there was only darkness. But it was not the same darkness as before. Now it felt alive. Now it felt like something was watching from inside it. Returned to the council with his report. He told them everything the witness had said. He showed them the recordings his ship had made, though many of the images were corrupted and strange, as if reality itself had refused to be captured. The council listened in silence. When he finished, no one spoke for a long time. Finally rose from her throne. She was ancient now, her exoskeleton cracked with age, but her mind was still sharp. We exiled them because we were afraid of what they might become, she said. We were right to be afraid, but we were wrong about what to do with that fear. We pushed them away. We forced them into the darkness. And in the darkness they found power we cannot comprehend. She turned to look at the stars through the chamber's great windows. They are not our enemies, but they are no longer our friends. They are something else now, something between guardians and gods, and we will have to learn to live in their shadow. The council meeting ended, but the story of the witness spread across the galaxy, and for the first time in 15 years, people began to hope again. Not because humanity would save them, but because humanity was still out there, watching from the dark, protecting them from dangers they would never see. It was a cold comfort, but in a galaxy that had grown very cold indeed, any comfort was welcome. 50 years after the human exodus, the galaxy had learned to live with ghosts. No one saw the humans anymore. No ships appeared on sensors. No voices spoke on communication channels, but everyone knew they were there. Everyone felt them watching from the spaces between stars. They had been the first to learn this lesson. Their great expansion had swept across dozens of systems, conquering worlds and enslaving populations. Their fleets had seemed unstoppable, and then one morning they simply stopped. Every ship in the forward fleet was found drifting in space, power systems dead, weapons offline. The crews were alive but changed. They would not speak of what had happened. They only whispered of shadows that came through the walls, of voices that spoke inside their minds, of a presence so vast and cold that it made the void itself seem warm. They pulled back their borders. They never expanded again. Pirates learned the same lesson. For years, raiders had terrorized the trade routes, growing bolder with each successful attack. Then the ghost ships began to appear. Vessels that came from nowhere, matched speed with pirate craft, and vanished just as quickly. The pirates who saw them described the same thing: human ships but wrong, hulls that moved like liquid, windows that glowed with impossible light, silence that felt like a scream. After the ghost ships appeared, the pirates surrendered. They handed over their weapons and their stolen goods and begged for mercy, not from the authorities, from the darkness. The galaxy's crime rate dropped to historic lows. No one wanted to attract attention from whatever was watching. But it was not all fear. There were gentler signs as well. Young species on distant worlds, just beginning to reach for the stars, found mysterious gifts in their systems. Navigation data that should not exist. Engineering principles that solved problems they had not yet encountered. Medical knowledge that cured diseases they had never named. The gifts came with no explanation, no demands, no contact. They simply appeared as if someone had left them by the door, like a neighbor bringing food to a new family. The historian Rand, now old and respected, spent his final years studying these patterns. He published a book that became famous across the galaxy. In it, he wrote, "Humanity has not abandoned us. They have changed the nature of their relationship with us. They were once our partners walking beside us through the galaxy. Now they are our guardians watching from above. They protect us from threats we cannot see. They guide us with gifts we cannot understand. They ask nothing in return. Perhaps this is punishment for how we treated them. Perhaps it is simply who they have always been. Perhaps there is no difference." The Council still governed the unified systems, but its power had faded. Conflicts ended before they began, not through diplomacy, but through intervention no one could explain. Trade flourished along routes that seemed impossibly safe. The old problems, the failing systems and broken technologies, were slowly repaired by solutions that appeared in research databases overnight. No one talked about the humans directly. It felt wrong, like speaking about gods in casual conversation, but everyone thought about them. Every species wondered what they were doing out there in the outer dark, what they were building, what they were becoming. Lived longer than any in recorded history. Some said it was stubbornness, some said it was guilt. On her final day, she called a special session of the council. Her body was failing, her compound eyes clouded with age, but her mind remained clear. "I was there when we exiled them," she said, her voice crackling through the translator. "I voted for the decision. I thought we were protecting ourselves from chaos, from change, from the unpredictable nature of a species that would not conform to our ways." She paused, gathering strength for what she wanted to say. "I was wrong, not because humanity was harmless. They were never harmless. They were dangerous in ways we could barely imagine, but they were also necessary. They brought something to the galaxy that we could not provide ourselves. Hope, courage, the belief that tomorrow could be better than today." Her eyes turned toward the great windows, toward the stars that filled the darkness. "We drove them into the void and they conquered it. We rejected them and they became something greater than we could ever be. They did not destroy us, though they could have. They did not enslave us, though we deserved no better. Instead, they became our silent protectors, our invisible guardians, our conscience watching from the dark." His mandibles clicked in an expression of deep sorrow. "We exiled our children, and our children became gods. What does that say about us? What does that say about them?" She fell silent. The chamber waited. "I have one hope," she finally continued. "One small hope for the future. Humanity was always a forgiving species. They forgave each other for terrible things. They forgave other species for worse. Perhaps in time they will forgive us. Perhaps one day they will step out of the shadows and walk beside us again, not as servants, not as helpers, but as the equals they always were and we were too blind to see." She closed her eyes. "Until that day, we must earn their forgiveness. We must become worthy of their return. We must learn to be brave and kind and hopeful as they taught us. We must carry their light even in their absence." Died that night peacefully in her chambers, her eyes still turned toward the stars. The galaxy mourned her. She had been a voice of wisdom in dark times, a reminder of mistakes that should never be repeated. Her words spread across the unified systems, translated into every language, heard by every species. And somewhere in the outer dark, the humans heard them too. 100 years after the Exodus, a small child on a distant world looked up at the night sky and asked her mother why the darkness seemed less frightening than it used to. Her mother smiled and pointed at the stars. Because someone is out there watching over us, she said. They left a long time ago, but they never really left. They protect us from things we cannot see. They guide us with gifts we cannot understand. They are our guardians in the dark. Who are they? The child asked. The mother's smile grew wider, touched with wonder and sadness and hope. They are called humans. They were once like us. They walked on solid ground and breathed simple air and feared the darkness between stars. But they became something more, something beautiful and terrible and kind. The child thought about this for a moment. Will they ever come back? The mother looked up at the stars, at the darkness that was no longer truly dark, at the vast silence that was no longer truly silent. Maybe, she said, someday, when we are ready, when we have grown enough to meet them as equals, when we have learned the lessons they tried to teach us. She hugged her child close. Until then, we will keep their memory alive. We will tell their stories. We will try to be a little more like them each day, brave in the face of fear, kind in the face of cruelty, hopeful in the face of despair. And maybe, just maybe, when they look down at us from the stars, they will be proud of what we have become. Far above, in the space between galaxies, in the outer dark that was now their home, the humans watched. They saw the child and her mother. They saw the galaxy they had left behind. They saw the changes, slow but real, that were spreading across the stars. And though they could not be heard, though they would not return until the time was right, they smiled. In the silence between stars, humanity had found its voice. And the galaxy at last had learned to listen,